Her response was immediate. "I honestly don't know," he said, pushing food around his plate, like the rice was the problem and not the 6 years sitting between us. "And that's exactly why I need this." I stared at him, my husband, trying to locate the man I married inside the one using therapy language like a weapon. 3 weeks of separation will give us perspective, he added, as if perspective was a measurable substance you could pick up at the airport on the way home. Perspective. One of those words that sounds deep but means nothing concrete. I leaned back and really looked at him. The familiar jawline, the wedding ring, the careful calm in his voice. When exactly had he turned into someone I barely recognized? "So you want to suspend our marriage," I said slowly, letting each word land, "while you're halfway across the planet, for 3 weeks. He exhaled, relieved, like I'd finally agreed to the terms of a contract he'd already drafted. "Exactly," he said. "No obligations, no pressure, just space to decompress and reflect." What he didn't say, what hung heavy between our plates, was the real part. No accountability either. No boundaries. No commitment. Basically a hall pass with a round-trip ticket attached. The logical move would have been to argue, demand explanations, ask a million questions until his story collapsed under its own weight. But I learned something about manipulation over the years. The person doing it always rehearses for resistance. They have answers prepared for your anger, your tears, your desperation. So I did the one thing he hadn't prepared for. "All right," I said. He blinked. "All right?" "Sure," I said, picking up my fork again. "If that's what you need, then all right." I kept eating like we'd just decided what movie to stream later. The bewilderment on his face almost made the gut punch worth it. He'd expected pleading, bargaining, a breakdown he could later call proof I'm emotional. Instead, I chewed fried rice with the emotional investment of someone discussing weather patterns. "You're actually okay with this?" His voice sharpened. "You're an adult who knows what you want," I said, meeting his eyes. 3 weeks, right? Your flight's Saturday." "Saturday morning," he confirmed, studying me like I was a puzzle that refused to solve itself. I smiled. Not warm, not cold, just empty. Because the moment he walked out that door, he thought he was pressing pause on me. He had no idea those 3 weeks were about to set me free. I used to think the beginning mattered more than the ending, that if two people met the right way at the right time, then love would naturally keep correcting everything that went wrong later. I'm Danielle Caldwell, 34, the kind of woman people describe as steady. I work in corporate operations, budgets, vendor contracts, logistics, calendars that look like war plans. I'm not dramatic, I don't scream, I don't slam doors. I solve problems. I organize chaos until it behaves. Victor used to say that was what he loved most about me. "You make life feel manageable," he told me when we were dating, smiling like he'd found a safe harbor. Back then, he was charming in an effortless way, confident without being loud, attentive without looking like he was performing it. We met at a friend's engagement party. I was helping the bride's sister fix the seating chart because no one else could understand why 2 divorced parents should not be seated at the same table. Victor wandered over with 2 drinks and said, "You look like the only adult in this room." I laughed. "That's not a compliment." "It's the highest compliment I know how to give," he replied, and somehow it didn't sound like a line. We dated for 2 years. He worked in marketing, travel, meetings, client dinners, the kind of job that makes everything look glamorous from the outside and exhausting from the inside. I admired him. He could walk into a room and make people want to agree with him. I'd always been more comfortable behind the scenes. When he proposed, it was exactly what you'd imagine Victor would do. Planned, polished, public enough to feel romantic, but controlled enough to keep the outcome predictable. A little restaurant overlooking the river. A violinist that appeared at the right moment, a ring that fit perfectly because he'd stolen one of mine weeks earlier and measured it like it was a business requirement. I said yes because I loved him, and because I believed the version of him he presented to me. The first year of marriage felt like a continuation of dating, just with more shared bills and less spontaneity. We learned each other's routines. I learned he liked his coffee strong, black, and made before he asked. He learned I liked quiet mornings and hated being rushed. We were fine. Then the small things started, not obvious things. Not the kind of red flags that scream run, more like tiny, repeated corrections that slowly trained me to shrink. He didn't like Dominic. Dominic was my oldest friend, the brother I never had. We'd been close since college. He'd helped me move apartments, sat with me through my dad's surgery, shown up when life got heavy. Victor met him once and smiled politely the entire night. After Dominic left, Victor said, "He's kind of immature, don't you think?" The words were soft, casual, but they landed with weight. Immature how? I asked. Victor shrugged. Just the vibe. I don't know. He doesn't seem like someone who's building a real future. That became Victor's favorite kind of sentence. I don't know. It's just the vibe. A verdict with no evidence. A dismissal you can't argue against because it isn't specific enough to disprove. Over time, my dinners with Dominic turned into, maybe next week. Then, I'm too tired. Then, Victor has something planned. Then, nothing. Victor started doing it with other things too. My hobbies, my time, my choices. If I wanted to take a class, he'd sigh and remind me how busy we were. If I wanted a weekend away, he'd talk about priorities. And I didn't notice how much I was adjusting until I realized my life had become a constant, quiet question. Is this going to upset him? By year 6, I was sleeping lightly, speaking carefully, editing myself in real time. And Victor became someone who could say space and perspective with the same calm voice he used to order wine. So when he sat across from me and asked for a 3-week pause right before boarding a plane to Tokyo, I didn't just hear a request. I heard a pattern, the same one I'd been living inside for years. Only this time, I stopped playing my role. The request for space didn't appear out of nowhere. It had been building, quietly, strategically, long before Tokyo. 3 months before that dinner, Victor started coming home later. Not dramatically late, just later. Client dinner, he'd say, loosening his tie. Strategy session. Networking. Marketing was vague enough to make anything sound legitimate. And I never wanted to be the suspicious wife who demanded proof. So I didn't. But the distance wasn't just physical. It was conversational. When I tried to talk about my day, he'd nod without listening. When I mentioned wanting to sign up for a weekend photography workshop, he'd tilt his head. Another commitment? We barely see each other as it is. We lived in the same house. We slept in the same bed. But somehow, everything I wanted began to sound selfish. Then came the shift in language. I've been feeling disconnected. You've changed. I don't feel supported. Each sentence carefully structured so I was subtly on trial. Disconnected how? I asked once. He shrugged. I don't know. It's just a feeling. Again with the feeling. Always intangible. Always unprovable. And somehow, always my responsibility to fix. His family didn't help. Victor's mother, Monica Caldwell, had a talent for smiling while slicing you open. At Sunday dinners, she'd say things like, "Victor works so hard. Marketing is such a competitive field. It must be hard for him to carry that pressure." Carry. As if I were weight. As if my job, my income, my steady contributions didn't exist. One afternoon, while clearing plates, she leaned closer and said softly, "A man needs admiration, Danielle, not analysis." I smiled politely, but the message was clear. Be softer. Be quieter. Be smaller. Victor never corrected her. He never defended me. He just let the narrative breathe. The final warning sign came 2 weeks before Tokyo. He was in the shower. His phone lit up on the bathroom counter. I wasn't snooping. I was grabbing a towel. The message preview flashed. Bethany. Are you sure this is the best way to handle it? My stomach tightened. Bethany was his colleague, married, friendly, the kind of woman who called everyone hun. Handle what? I didn't open the message. I didn't need to. The timing said enough. That night at dinner, Victor talked about Tokyo like it was oxygen. It'll give me clarity, he said. I need to understand if this marriage is still aligned with who I am. Aligned. We weren't a partnership anymore. We were a brand collaboration. So this trip, I asked calmly, is about work or about us? He paused just a second too long. Both. That's when I realized something important. He wasn't confused. He was calculating. He wanted the safety net of a wife waiting at home while he evaluated whether I still fit his evolving life plan. He wanted optionality, and he assumed I would remain constant, predictable, grateful for crumbs. The days leading up to his departure were surreal. He kept circling back to the topic. You're really okay with this? Yes. You're not angry? No. You're acting different. I'm respecting what you asked for. And that bothered him more than tears ever could. Because if I didn't break, he couldn't feel powerful. Friday night, he packed. I watched television in the living room while he hovered in the doorway twice, clearly waiting for me to ask him to stay. I didn't. Saturday morning, I brewed coffee at 5:30 a.m. When he stood by the door with his suitcase, he looked uncertain. So I guess this is it, he said. Have a safe flight, I replied, handing him a travel mug. Text me when you land. His hand trembled slightly. Are you sure you're okay? I gave him the same unreadable smile. Enjoy your trip. He hesitated, then left. And the moment the rideshare disappeared around the corner, I leaned against the door and exhaled. Not because I was devastated, but because I finally understood something. He thought he was testing me. He had no idea I had already started observing him. And what I was seeing wasn't love. It was control disguised as vulnerability. 3 weeks. He thought I'd spend them proving I needed him. He had no idea what 3 weeks would do to a woman who had finally stopped doubting herself. Tokyo was 8,000 miles away. But the first crack didn't happen because of distance. It happened because of a notification. 3 days after he left, my phone buzzed at 11:42 p.m. Victor, landed. Hotel's nice. Long flight. Miss you. I stared at the words. Miss you. 2 words that used to soften me. 2 words that used to make my chest tighten in relief. Now they felt procedural, like signing off on an email. I typed back, glad you arrived safely. Get some rest. The 3 dots appeared instantly, disappeared, appeared again. Victor, that's it? I leaned back against the couch, reading it twice. That's it? He had asked for a pause, and now he was grading my emotional performance. I replied, you wanted space. I'm respecting that. The typing bubble stayed for almost a full minute. Then, you don't seem upset. There it was. The real issue. I called him. He answered on the second ring. His face appeared on the screen. Hotel lighting, crisp white sheets behind him, city skyline glowing through the window. You look fine, he said immediately. I am fine, I replied. His jaw tightened. You're not bothered? You asked for 3 weeks to think about whether you want this marriage, I said calmly. What exactly would you like from me? Panic? That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? He exhaled sharply. You're acting cold. I'm acting consistent. Silence. Then he shifted tactics. I've been thinking about us, he said, lowering his voice into that careful vulnerability he used when he wanted control disguised as openness. Maybe we both contributed to this distance. Specifics, I asked. You've been less supportive. Of course. Supportive how? You question things. You analyze. Sometimes I just need you to believe in me. I've believed in you for 6 years, I said quietly. I adjusted my schedule around your travel. I stopped seeing Dominic because you didn't like him. I dropped 2 hobbies because you said we needed more us time. That's not fair, he snapped. I never stopped you. You didn't have to. You just made it miserable enough that it was easier not to. He went quiet. Then, casually, I ran into someone at dinner tonight. I felt my stomach tighten. Someone? Just colleagues. Bethany was there. Bethany. Interesting. Don't do that, he said. Do what? Make it sound like something. Then don't present it like a reveal. His expression shifted, defensive now. You're reading into things. Am I? The air between us thickened. "Danielle," he said, leaning closer to the screen, "this trip is about clarity. I need to see if I feel different without the pressure." "The pressure of what?" "Expectations, structure, the routine." I stared at him. "You mean the marriage?" He didn't answer, and in that silence, something snapped into focus. He didn't want to lose me. He wanted to know if there was something better, while keeping me safely in place. "You're not asking for clarity," I said softly. "You're asking for insurance." "That's ridiculous." "Is it?" He ran a hand through his hair. "You're twisting this." "No," I said. "For the first time, I'm not." He shifted again, irritation leaking through. "I thought this space would help us reconnect, but you're using it to build a case against me." "I'm not building anything," I replied evenly. "I'm observing." He leaned back. "So what are you saying?" "I'm saying," I said slowly, feeling my heartbeat steady instead of spike, "that if you come back from Tokyo expecting to find me grateful you returned, you might be disappointed." His eyes narrowed slightly. "You sound like you've already decided something." "Have you?" I countered. Another silence. Then, softly, "I don't know." And that was the moment. Not the trip. Not the miss you. Not Bethany. The moment he admitted he didn't know if he wanted the life we built, while expecting me to remain certain. The imbalance hit me like cold water. He wanted optionality. I was expected to be loyalty. I looked at him on that hotel screen. Perfect lighting, perfect skyline, perfect ambiguity. "Take your 3 weeks," I said quietly. "Figure out what you want." "And you?" he asked. "I will too." We ended the call. I sat in the dark living room, phone in my lap, heart surprisingly calm. He thought the pause would make me cling tighter. Instead, it exposed something irreversible. For 6 years, I had been proving my commitment. For the first time, I was evaluating his, and something told me he might not like the results. The house felt different after that call. Not empty, just honest. I didn't cry. That surprised me the most. 6 years ago, even the hint of distance in Victor's voice would have sent me spiraling, analyzing every sentence, replaying every conversation, asking myself what I had done wrong. That night, I just sat there, quiet, aware. For the first time, I wasn't trying to fix anything. I went to bed without texting him again, and I slept. Not the restless kind of sleep where your brain keeps negotiating with itself. Deep sleep. When I woke up Sunday morning, sunlight was spilling across the kitchen counter. I brewed coffee and noticed something strange. There was no tension in my shoulders, no anticipatory anxiety about what mood he'd wake up in, no scanning the emotional weather forecast, just stillness. That scared me more than anger would have, because calm meant clarity, and clarity meant I could no longer pretend. I pulled out my laptop and opened our shared financial spreadsheet. Not to snoop, not to punish, to understand. Victor and I had always kept things semi-separate. My salary, his salary, joint account for bills. The house was rented, no children, no tangled investments. On paper, we were clean. Emotionally, we were anything but. Around noon, my phone buzzed. "Victor, thinking about you." I stared at it. A week ago, I would have melted. Now I typed, "Hope your meetings are productive." The 3 dots appeared instantly. "That's all you have to say?" There it was again. He didn't miss me. He missed the reassurance. I called Dominic. He answered on the second ring. "Well, well," he said. "Look who remembers I exist." I smiled despite myself. "I owe you an apology for disappearing for 3 years, for letting someone make me believe I had to." He was quiet for a moment. "You okay?" he asked. And there was no judgment in his voice, just concern. "I think I am," I said slowly. Victor asked for a 3-week pause. Dominic let out a low whistle. "That's convenient timing. He's in Tokyo." "Of course he is." We talked for an hour, not about Victor, about life, about things I'd missed, about how small my world had gotten without me realizing it. After we hung up, I didn't feel guilt. I felt reconnected. Monday morning, I did something impulsive. I signed up for a photography workshop, the same one I'd wanted 2 years ago. When I mentioned it back then, Victor had frowned slightly. Thursday evenings are our time, which usually meant him scrolling through emails while I watched TV quietly beside him. I registered for the class anyway. Then I went to the gym, not the boutique wellness studio Victor preferred, the one with eucalyptus towels and silent treadmills. The old school gym 2 blocks away. Loud, real, honest. I felt awkward at first, then alive. Sweat, breath, muscles shaking. My body felt like it belonged to me again. Tuesday evening, Victor called. Video again. He looked sharper this time. Hair styled, shirt crisp. "You've been busy," he said, scanning my background. "Have I?" "I called earlier. I was at the gym." "Since when do you go to the gym?" "Since I have free evenings." He didn't like that. "You sound different," he said. "Different how?" "Independent." The word didn't sound like a compliment. I've always been independent. "You used to check in more." "I used to feel like I needed to." Silence. He shifted tone. "I talked to Bethany again," he said carefully. "She thinks space is healthy. Is that what you think?" "I don't know yet." There it was again. The uncertainty. The luxury of indecision, while I had been living in commitment. "Victor," I said softly, "what are you actually hoping happens in these 3 weeks?" He hesitated. "I guess I wanted to see if I miss you." I nodded slowly. "And if you don't?" He looked irritated. "Why are you framing it like that?" "Because that's the equation you set up." Another silence. "Are you seeing someone?" he asked suddenly. I almost laughed. "You're the one who asked for a pause." "That doesn't mean what?" He swallowed. "Nothing." The call ended with no resolution. But something inside me had shifted permanently. For 6 years, I had measured myself against his approval. Now I was measuring him against my standards. And the results were uncomfortable. That night, I sat at the dining table alone. No tension. No invisible performance review. Just me. And the realization that being alone felt lighter than being in a marriage where I was constantly negotiating for emotional oxygen. I didn't hate him. That would have been easier. I just saw him clearly. And once you see clearly, you can't go back to pretending. Week 2 didn't feel like a separation. It felt like exposure. Victor's messages became more frequent and more pointed. Monday morning. Went to this incredible rooftop restaurant last night. The city lights were unreal. Wish you could have seen it. Translation. I'm living beautifully without you. Does that bother you yet? I replied with a simple, sounds nice. Glad you're enjoying it. 10 minutes later. That's it? I stared at my phone. It was fascinating. How badly he needed reaction. What kind of response are you looking for? I typed. There was a long pause before he answered. I don't know. Something real. I almost smiled. For 6 years, I had given him something real, consistent, loyal, present. He didn't want real. He wanted dramatic. He wanted proof he still mattered more than my stability. Tuesday evening, after my photography class, I saw 3 missed calls. 1 voicemail. Where are you? His voice was sharp. I've been trying to reach you for an hour. An hour. The same man who had asked for space now sounded offended I wasn't on standby. I called him back. He answered immediately. You disappeared. I was in class. What class? Photography. Silence. You signed up for that? Yes. Without talking to me? The irony was almost poetic. You asked for space, I reminded him. I'm using it. That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean, Victor? His tone shifted, controlled again. I meant space to think about us, not to rebuild your entire routine. There it was. He didn't want distance. He wanted stagnation. You're upset that I'm not waiting, I said quietly. I'm upset that you seem unaffected. I let that settle. You thought I'd fall apart. That's not fair, isn't it? He exhaled heavily. Danielle, I'm trying to figure out if I'm happy, and I'm trying to figure out why your happiness requires my uncertainty. That ended the call, but it didn't end the pattern. Wednesday night, I received a text from Monica, Victor's mother. He sounds stressed. Maybe you could be more reassuring right now. I stared at the message. So that's what this was becoming. A narrative. I replied politely. Victor asked for space to reflect. I'm respecting that. She responded almost immediately. Men sometimes need to test their feelings. It doesn't mean they don't love you. Test. Like I was an exam. Thursday afternoon, Dominic called. You're not going to believe this, he said. What? Jenna ran into Bethany at a networking event. Apparently, Victor's been telling people he's not sure you're emotionally supportive anymore. I felt my chest tighten, but not with panic, with clarity. He's building justification, I said. For what? For whatever he decides. I leaned back against the couch. Of course, if he returned and wanted to leave, he could say he tried, that he needed space because I'd changed. If he returned and stayed, he could frame it as mercy. Either way, he controlled the story, unless I stopped participating. Friday evening, Victor video called again. He looked tense this time. We need to talk, he said. Okay. I've been hearing things. Like? That you've been going out a lot. I almost laughed. I went to the gym and class with Dominic. Yes. You know how that looks? How what looks? Like you're moving on. The hypocrisy was breathtaking. You're in Tokyo, I said evenly. Reevaluating our marriage. That's different. How? He didn't answer immediately. It just is. No, I said softly. It's not. Silence stretched. Then his voice lowered. Are you seeing someone? There it was again. Projection. No, I said calmly. Are you? His eyes flashed. Of course not. I held his gaze. Then why are you so defensive? His jaw tightened. You're twisting this. I'm reflecting it. He ran a hand through his hair. You don't seem to care if I come back. That's not true, I said. I care whether I want you to. That stopped him. What does that mean? It means pauses work both ways. His voice sharpened. So you're deciding if you want this marriage too? Yes. He stared at me like I'd just broken a rule. That wasn't the agreement, I almost whispered when I replied. You don't get exclusive access to doubt. The call ended abruptly after that. But the escalation didn't stop. Saturday morning, I received another message. Victor, flying back Monday. We need to talk in person. He was supposed to stay another 10 days. He was cutting the trip short, not because he missed me, because he was losing narrative control. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I went to the gym. Sweat cleared my head. When I finally texted back, it was simple. Safe flight. He called immediately. You don't sound surprised. I'm not. I realized something, he said. Oh? I made a mistake asking for the pause. Interesting. Why? Because I don't want to lose you. I leaned against the locker room wall. Did you think you might? I didn't think you'd change. There it was. He didn't expect evolution. He expected endurance. I didn't change, I said quietly. I stopped shrinking. He didn't respond to that. Monday was coming, and with it, the confrontation he hadn't rehearsed for. Because this time, I wasn't reacting. I was choosing. And that terrified him more than anger ever could. Monday arrived too quickly. His flight was scheduled to land at 2 p.m. I cleaned the house that morning, not because he expected it, not because I felt pressure, but because I wanted clarity in the space around me. When everything is uncertain, order helps. By 1:30, I was sitting on the couch with a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. For the first time since this started, I felt afraid, not of losing him, of losing 6 years of history, of admitting that love alone had not been enough. When his key turned in the door at 3:12 p.m., my heart did something unexpected. It steadied. Victor walked in with 2 large suitcases and exhaustion written across his face. His hair was shorter, his expression sharper. He looked like someone who had been thinking too much. Hey, he said softly. Welcome back. He set the suitcases down and looked around the house. The small changes were visible. The photography books stacked neatly on the table, the gym bag near the door, fresh air moving through open windows. The house feels different, he said. It is. He studied me. You feel different. I am. We stood there, 6 years between us, neither moving closer. I made a mistake, he said suddenly. Which one? The pause, asking for space, all of it. I didn't react immediately. Why was it a mistake? I asked calmly. Because I thought distance would help me understand what I wanted, he said. But instead, it just made me realize what I could lose. I watched his face carefully. And what did you almost lose? You, he said quickly. But something in his tone felt incomplete. I stepped closer, not emotionally, just physically enough to see his eyes clearly. Be honest, I said. Why did you come back early? He hesitated. I missed you. That's not enough. His jaw tightened. Bethany told me Dominic mentioned you seemed happy. There it was. The truth. It scared me, he admitted. The idea that you might not need me. I felt something break, not violently, but quietly. I don't need you, I said. His head snapped up. What? I don't need you, I repeated, voice steady. I chose you. Silence filled the room. And when you asked for space to evaluate me, I continued, you shifted that dynamic. He ran a hand over his face. I wasn't evaluating you. Then what were you doing? I was trying to figure out if I was still happy. And did you? He hesitated. I don't know. That answer hurt more than anger would have. 6 years, and he still didn't know. I sat down on the couch. For the first time since he walked in, my composure cracked. Not in tears, but in exhaustion. Victor, I said quietly, do you understand what that does to someone? To tell them you need 3 weeks to decide if they're worth keeping? I didn't mean it like that, but that's what it was. He sat across from me, leaning forward. I love you. I believed him. But love without security feels like standing on unstable ground. I love you too, I said. The words surprised him, but I can't be in a marriage where I'm waiting for the next evaluation. His face tightened. So what are you saying? I'm saying I'm tired. He reached for my hand. For a second, I almost let him take it. Almost. Because muscle memory is powerful. History is powerful. Comfort is powerful. But I pulled my hand back gently. I spent years trying to be easier to love, I said. Quieter, more accommodating, less me. That's not true. It is, I whispered. And the moment you loosened your grip for 9 days, I realized how much of myself I'd been holding back. Tears welled in his eyes. I didn't know you felt that way. That's part of the problem. Silence settled again. Heavy. Real. For a brief second, doubt crept in. Was I overreacting? Was this salvageable? Was I destroying something fixable? 6 years. Memories. Plans. The version of us I once believed in. It would be easier to forgive him, easier to rewind, easier to pretend the pause was just a misunderstanding. But I couldn't unsee what I had seen. I couldn't unknow what it felt like to breathe without pressure. And the darkest part wasn't anger. It was grief. Grief for the marriage I thought I had. Grief for the woman I used to be inside it. He looked at me and whispered, "Tell me what to do." And that was the moment I knew. If he still needed instructions on how to value me, we were already too far apart. Tell me what to do. His voice cracked when he said it. 6 years ago, that sentence would have melted me. I would have interpreted it as vulnerability, effort, a willingness to change. Now, sitting across from him in the quiet living room, I heard something else. Dependence on direction. He didn't want transformation. He wanted a script. I can't tell you how to love me, I said softly. Victor swallowed. I'm asking how to fix this. You fix something when it breaks by accident, I replied. You asked for space intentionally. He stood and began pacing, agitation rising under his controlled tone. I panicked, he said. Work's been intense. I felt disconnected. I thought time away would help me reset. Reset from what? I asked calmly. From pressure. What pressure? He hesitated. Expectations. The word echoed in the room. My expectation that my husband be certain he wants to be married to me, I asked. That's not what I meant. It's exactly what you meant. He stopped pacing. I never planned to leave you. No, I said quietly. You planned to see if something better existed first. His face flushed. That's not fair. Then tell me, I pressed. If Tokyo had felt exciting enough, if attention had felt validating enough, would you have come back with the same urgency? Silence. And in that silence, I found my answer. He didn't say yes. He didn't say no. He just didn't say anything. That was enough. I stood and walked to my desk. From the top drawer, I pulled out the folder I'd requested earlier in the week. Not filed. Not signed. Prepared. Victor's eyes followed the movement. What's that? Clarity, I said, setting it gently on the coffee table between us. His expression shifted from confusion to alarm. You met with a lawyer? I met with information. You were planning this while I was trying to figure things out? You were figuring out whether you wanted this marriage, I replied evenly. I was figuring out whether I should. He stared at the folder like it was betrayal itself. You went straight to divorce? I went straight to self-respect. The room felt different now, not tense, decisive. I thought you'd fight for us, he said. I did, I answered, for years. He flinched. You didn't fight when I asked for space. No, I said. I agreed. That's not fighting. Exactly. His breathing grew heavier. You're punishing me. I'm responding to you. He looked smaller somehow, not physically, but emotionally. The confidence that used to anchor him was wavering. I love you, he said again, almost pleading now. I believe you, I said. But love isn't supposed to feel like an audition. That landed. He sat down slowly. What if we start over, he asked. Counseling, real effort, no more space. I considered it, truly considered it. But something inside me had shifted permanently during those 9 days. Do you know what changed for me? I asked quietly. He shook his head. I realized I feel more secure alone than I did waiting for you to decide if I was enough. The truth of that hit both of us at the same time. He closed his eyes briefly. I didn't realize how much control I had. That's the problem, I said gently. You never saw it as control. You saw it as preference. He looked at me, genuinely unsettled. I didn't mean to make you shrink. I know, I said, but impact matters more than intent. The folder sat between us like a line drawn in ink. This doesn't have to happen, he whispered. It already did, I replied softly. The moment you asked for a pause. He leaned back, staring at the ceiling. So that's it. That's it. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet. Adult. Final. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for his emotional temperature to determine mine. I had found my footing, and I wasn't stepping backward. Victor didn't yell. He didn't slam doors. He just sat there, staring at the folder like it had personally betrayed him. I can't believe you'd throw away 6 years over one mistake, he said finally. One mistake? I repeated softly. His jaw tightened. The pause. Tokyo. I admitted it was wrong. I folded my hands in my lap. The pause wasn't the mistake, I said. It was the symptom. He looked up sharply. Symptom of what? Of you slowly building an exit while keeping me stable as backup. That's not what I was doing. It's exactly what you were doing, I replied calmly. You just didn't call it that. He stood abruptly and walked toward the kitchen, running his hands through his hair. This is insane, he muttered. I go away for work. I try to figure out my feelings responsibly, and you use it to prepare divorce papers. I used it to understand my position, I said. He turned back toward me. You never even fought for me. There it was again. The expectation. You wanted tears, I said quietly. You wanted to see that I couldn't function without you. That's not fair. It's accurate. Silence. Then he said something that surprised both of us. I didn't think you'd be okay. I nodded slowly. That's the problem. The truth hovered between us. He had assumed permanence. He had assumed endurance. He had assumed I would always choose him, even when he wasn't sure he was choosing me. I thought you'd wait, he admitted. I did, I said, for years. That one landed deeper than anything else. He sat back down. What am I supposed to tell people? He asked after a while. The truth. He let out a hollow laugh. You think they'll believe that I asked for space and you decided to divorce me? I don't need them to believe me, I said. I just need to live honestly. That evening, he packed a smaller bag. I'm staying at a hotel tonight, he said. Okay. He lingered by the door. You're really done? Yes. He searched my face for hesitation. There wasn't any. I never meant to lose you, he said quietly. You didn't lose me, I replied. You underestimated me. The door closed behind him, and the house fell into stillness. I didn't cry immediately. I walked through each room, the bedroom, the kitchen, the hallway, 6 years of shared routines echoing in empty air. Then I sat on the couch and let myself grieve. Not for him exactly, but for the version of us that had once felt solid. The next few days unfolded predictably. His mother called. Danielle, Monica began, her voice composed but edged. Victor says you're filing for divorce. I'm moving forward, yes. Marriage requires forgiveness. It also requires certainty, I said gently. You're being dramatic. No, I replied. I'm being consistent. She hung up soon after. Victor texted late at night. We can fix this. I'll go to therapy. Please don't do this impulsively. I didn't respond to most of them. Not out of cruelty, out of clarity. By Friday, the papers were officially filed. When he received them, he called immediately. You actually did it, he said, disbelief thick in his voice. I said I would. You didn't even wait the full 3 weeks. I didn't need 3 weeks. He was quiet for a long moment. So that's how replaceable I am? I inhaled slowly. You're not replaceable, I said. You're just not indispensable. That silence hurt him more than anger ever could. Word spread quickly. Friends reached out. Some confused, some supportive. Dominic showed up that evening with takeout and zero judgment. You okay? He asked. Yes. Sure? Yes, I said again, and this time it was true. Victor contested the filing at first, not aggressively, just stalling. It felt like one last attempt to slow the inevitable. But our finances were clean. No children, no shared property beyond basic furniture. Legally, it was simple. Emotionally, it had already been decided the moment he asked for a pause. A week later, he came to collect the rest of his things. We stood in the doorway again, mirroring the morning he left for Tokyo. This isn't how I pictured our story ending, he said. Neither did I. He hesitated. I thought you needed me. I thought you wanted me, I replied. He nodded slowly, then left. The finality wasn't explosive. It was quiet. And sometimes quiet endings are the most powerful because they don't leave room for denial. They just close. 4 months later, the divorce was finalized. 20 minutes in a courtroom, a few signatures, a judge who had likely seen 100 versions of our story before lunch. Victor and I walked out through different doors. No screaming, no cinematic collapse. Just the end of something that had already been over, the moment uncertainty entered, where commitment should have lived. The house felt different after everything was settled. Not haunted. Expanded. I kept the photography classes. I joined the gym consistently. I reconnected with Dominic without checking anyone's emotional temperature first. One Saturday morning, I was standing in my kitchen, music playing, sunlight pouring through the window, when it hit me. I felt light. Not because I was single. Not because I had won, but because I wasn't being evaluated anymore. No one was measuring my worth against their fluctuating certainty. No one was deciding whether I was enough. Victor and I ran into each other once, months later, at a cafe downtown. He looked tired. Hey, he said. Hi. Small talk. Polite smiles. I didn't expect you to move on that fast, he admitted quietly. I didn't move on fast, I said. I woke up. He studied me for a moment, then nodded. I didn't realize what I had, he said. That's usually how clarity works, I replied. We didn't exchange numbers again. We didn't promise friendship. We just parted. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel unfinished. Here's what I learned. When someone asks for a pause in commitment, they're not just evaluating you, they're revealing themselves. Love should not feel like an audition. Marriage is not a subscription you renew when convenient. And if someone needs distance to decide whether you're worth choosing, you're allowed to decide first. He thought those 3 weeks would test me. They did. And I passed by realizing I deserved a love that never needed to be paused. The divorce was final months ago, but my freedom started the moment I said, all right, and meant it.